Okay. Can we start? Yeah. Good. So good afternoon to everybody. My name is Andrius Kubilius. I'm a member of European Parliament from Lithuania. I am leading here in European Parliament Euronest delegation. Euronest, you know, is a parliamentary assembly with all Eastern Partnership countries. And perhaps everybody knows that really quite a big dynamic changes are happening in Eastern Partnership region. Some are positive, some are not so positive, maybe, with the war in between of Armenia and Azerbaijan. But now we are coming to very important few weekends, like this weekend and next weekend, which what I could call, you know, will be a democracy festival in three most advanced Eastern Partnership countries who have association agreements. Ukraine will have local elections this weekend. Georgia will have national parliamentary elections next Saturday, perhaps. And Moldova will have also the first round of presidential elections on the 1st of November, and with the second round on 15th of November. So that is aim of our webinar today, is really to look a little bit more closely. So how those elections are going to happen. You know, first of all, of course, for us, it's very important to see if the elections will prove that those three countries are able to show maturity of their democracy. Second, of course, for us, it's very interesting to learn who is going to win and who is maybe will not be so successful, what opinion polls are showing. And the last point, what is interesting for us is, of course, what will be after elections, and especially in this, you know, path of European integration, which three countries are at least in their statements are showing big interest. So I am very glad now to start our discussion. The whole seminar is, I would mention, is organized by our informal forum, which we established here in the European Parliament EU Neighborhood East Forum, together with International Renaissance Foundation from Ukraine and Georgia Institute of Politics. And the procedure, how the seminar will go. First of all, we shall ask, you know, independent experts to talk about individual countries. We have three very well-known experts on individually on each country. Then we asked to make comments our members of European Parliament who are in one or another way through their official positions, like rapporteurs or leaders of delegations, or in general, you know, having some strong interest, to make comments on some of those special countries. And then we shall have maybe time also for Q&A session, where I would urge participants to put their questions. The best way would be to put in the chat, because this webinar is going in such a way that only speakers in the panel have the freedom to unmute their microphones and to speak out. Now I am looking if our Ukrainian expert has joined our seminar. If not, then I will ask, maybe we shall start then from Georgia. From Georgia, where Mr. Corneli Kakhatia is director of Georgian Institute of Politics, and then we should ask him to make some comments, some statement about forthcoming Georgian elections, which we consider as very important elections. Please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation. I hope we will have an interesting discussion. As far as the Georgian election, I think it's very important for the country, and not only for the country, and I would say generally for the region, because Georgia is, considered to be one of the front runners in Eastern Partnership. And how Georgia will conduct this parliamentary election means a lot, not only for regional security and stability, but also for the EU, as Georgia is still considered to be poster child of kind of success story in Eastern Partnership. But in general, I think if we look the general situation in the country, as it was expected, is quite polarized. But unlike previous election, when we had two polls, now at least after the constitutional changes, you have some other smaller political parties who actually you can hear their voices, and I think this is one good thing about the constitutional changes. But in general, I think the results are kind of unpredictable. It was, if you would ask me a few weeks ago, probably it was much easier to say that the ruling party Georgian Dream will prevail. But because of this, because of the the COVID-19 situation, and because of the the things are getting even worse daily basis. So because of that, actually, image of government and ruling party actually suffers almost like daily basis. And as one of the Georgian commentators said, if this election would be held, let's say, 1 month after the October, nobody knows what would be the results. So that's the reason why ruling party is trying to hold this election. And actually, even though situation with COVID gets worse, we don't have a feeling that Georgian government is trying to tighten this the epidemiological situation. And that was absolutely different in spring when we had very low number of the affected the COVID affected people, and now we have like almost a daily huge number. But because of the election, I think government is trying now to hold this election at any cost, and that's a kind of reality. And another important thing in this election is that there's a lot of, as what expected, tension, especially in the regions. There's some independent organization who actually already reported there are several cases where actually several NGOs, they feel, or they actually said that several times there was some sort of attempt to use administrative resources even before the election. And so we will see how this will be in general, what will be the atmosphere in the country. And as far as the the results of this election, I think what Georgian people actually expect, this is a multi-party parliament. We don't know, I mean, who will be the winner in this election so far, but one thing is clear, that if we will get multi-party parliament, that will be one step front for Georgian democracy. But the main question will be probably after election is that after we will see what will be the configuration, I mean, how the Georgian political parties will work together in coalition, if that will be the necessary. Because as you know, because of very high polarization, it's very unlikely that the ruling party can work with second, the biggest opposition party, UNM, and vice versa. So I think that all political parties probably need to work with the smaller parties, and smaller parties, in case they will gain some momentum in this election, they might have, quite important influence on the next government. So, but of course, this is just speculation, and we cannot say, exactly what will be the result. And another thing which is also important, that because of COVID and because of the general situation in other parts of the world, interest toward Georgian election is not so high. We don't have so many international observers like we used to have. Of course, we have smaller delegation from OSCE and IRI and some other smaller group, but I mean, they are not capable to monitor everything like it was, for instance, 2012 election. And this election is also important because according to Georgian tradition, Georgian people and Georgian voters normally they don't actually vote for the third term for the ruling party. So that was the history maybe last 28 years. So now we will see if the tradition is still maintained or there will be some change. Of course, the COVID situation also helped the ruling party to boost its popularity last, I would say, 8 months. Otherwise, their popularity was a little bit low. And one more important thing also about this election is that as traditionally it was the case, we have almost like 30% of the people who are undecided. And nobody knows actually where this vote goes, but most probably there's a calculation that, mostly this is oppositional voices, oppositional votes, but there can be some part maybe go to ruling party or some other political parties. And last thing, what I also wanted to highlight that I think this election could be very important for Georgia, as you probably know that ruling party actually put new initiative in their program, basically saying proclaiming that during next 4 years, Georgia will try to apply for EU membership. That's quite a bold statement, and we don't know how that will be fulfilled in next 4 years. But one thing is clear that as Georgia's European ambition is growing, there will be more scrutiny from EU side, and I think we really need to be vigilant about this election. And the good thing is that EU and United States and generally the West still enjoys quite high ratings in Georgian society. So all reaction which we will hear from European capitals and member states and from the Brussels, it will be very important for political players and generally for the population. And I think EU is in good position also to address some shortcomings which we already see in this election. Maybe I'll stop here, and then I will be more than happy to be more active in Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Korneli. And really, I think that a lot of questions on elections and on especially on ambition, to put a request for the membership, really it's very, very important and very interesting development. But now I see that Alexander Shushko joined us, so really maybe we shall postpone questions to Georgians and to Moldavians and Ukrainians in general for the second part of our session. Now I would like to ask Alexander Shushko, Executive Director from International Renaissance Foundation from Ukraine, to make his statement about this weekend, this Sunday elections, local elections in Ukraine, and as we understand, besides elections, there will be also referendum or plebiscite to the questions of President Zelensky. So it's interesting also to hear your opinion how things are going on in Ukraine now. So Alexander, please switch on your camera and microphone, and we are ready to listen to your statement.
Hello, everyone. I'm just, I have some problems with connections, which means I'm not sure if my camera is available. But if not, okay.
We do not see you, but you can speak. Okay, we shall imagine.
Okay, so
Yeah.
at least I can be heard. Thank you for inviting me to speak to this panel. And really, this is a big event ahead of us in Ukraine, which is local and municipal election. And it would not be exaggeration to say that probably it is the most significant local elections in Ukraine since independence. The reason for that is an unprecedented level of decentralization and devolution of power, which was introduced in Ukraine within last cycle since 2015 recent municipal elections. So now the power in the hands of the local authorities and the self-governance bodies is unprecedented as compared to the previous, which embrace both financial capacity and also the power to run various policies on the local and regional level. So there are big power at stake. So that is why we are really much preoccupied with what's going on during this election in Ukraine. Then we have there is a new reality in place, which is not just the new government, the new president elected last year in place, but also this is a local elections which is framed by absolutely new administrative structure of Ukraine. So Ukraine just recently accomplished the very ambitious local governance reform, which introduced the new, totally new structure of local communities and the new districts, rayons. So the whole structure of local administration, self-governance is different from what we had 5 years ago. In addition to that, we have totally new legislation, electoral legislation in place. Just a few months ago, the parliament adopted the election code, which introduced much different model of voting and counting of votes, which is a hybrid model, including proportional. So it's based on proportional system, but also includes some elements called open list voting, which means that voters can select not just political parties to vote, but also individual candidates on the list to make them fight within the party list. So this is much complicated electoral system, and it's certainly there is a risk of, as any new system, that may not work well in the first time, and certainly there is a huge concern if local personnel of local election commissions are really able and capable, knowledgeable to manage all these elements of this model, including very specific counting of votes. So we expect some irregularities connected to the new model of election, new model of counting of votes, and certainly that makes us worried about. Then on the political landscape, I think that this local election represent the wider possible political spectrum in Ukraine ever, which means that the variety of choices is totally unprecedented. And unlike in many previous campaigns, now we see that in many regions and big cities, the dominance of the local political parties, which is really, it's not totally new, but the scope of this phenomena is unprecedented. As a result, probably we may face a new reality when the winners of the mayor elections in top 5 biggest cities of Ukraine will not represent parliamentary political forces at all. They will represent local political parties which do not have a national representation. Certainly there is a big challenge. Certainly this is something which is unusual for normal democratic political model, but it's possible when it comes to the legislation. In fact, we have a variety of local political projects run by regional leaders. Most of them are current mayors of big cities, such as Kyiv with Vitaly Klitschko, but also Odessa, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Lviv, and some other biggest cities. So the most likely, again, the winners will not belong to any major national political force. And that certainly provides some challenge for the stability and coherence of the entire political system of Ukraine. When it comes to the overall democratic principles and spirits, certainly there are lots of the problems, first of all, connected to the attempt to use hidden financial resources, hidden administrative resources, some attempts of bribery of voters was already detected. So there are a variety of technical, variety of challenges. But again, the major one, is that the overall crisis of them, we have a variety of local political forces which will likely to win in the major constituencies, major big cities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alexander. Thanks a lot for very informative, statement. As we agreed before, because Mr. Witold Waszczykowski, member of European Parliament, informed us that he needs to leave us earlier, and since he is leading European Parliament delegation with Ukraine, so I would like to ask Mr. Waszczykowski to make his comment now, before we shall turn to Moldova and to other comments. Mr. Waszczykowski, if you are connected, so please, the floor is yours. Okay, so I do not see that he's reacting to our proposal. So then perhaps we shall switch to Moldova. So really very, very important elections also. So we have Stefan Gligor, from attorney and expert on public policy from Moldova. So pleasure to see you here, and tell us about how presidential elections will look like in Moldova. So who is going to win? Dodon or Maia Sandu? Please predict us.
You want to start with the conclusion, with the end. First of all, thank you for inviting me and hearing my opinion. I'd like to begin, by saying that you mentioned that we have a festival of democracy. Well, I'm sure we will have a festival. I'm not sure about democracy, so we will see soon. And I'd like to begin with a few words about the Central Electoral Commission. I think it's important. Once in 4 years, we reach this point, we have election, and we realize that we don't have an independent Central Electoral Commission. And that happens already for many years, unfortunately, and many scrutiny. These parliamentary elections began with huge doubts about the independence of the Central Electoral Commission. Actually, the political support from one of the main opposition leaders, Maia Sandu, was withdrawn from the Chimil, the president of the Central Electoral Commission, on the basis of biased behavior in favor of Socialist Party and Dodon as the candidate they support. So this decision also resonated with a big debate in the society about the independence of the Central Electoral Commission, due to the fact that the Electoral Commission refused public hearings on opening electoral bureaus sections in electoral polls in foreign countries. We have a big diaspora, and it's a big debate every year about whether we will have enough electoral polls, so-called secции votare sections, voting sections abroad or not. And the Central Electoral Commission had a very, very untransparent behavior related to this issue. They refused any hearings. And it continued with a big scandal related to the preliminary registration of our citizen abroad. So there is a procedure of the Electoral Commission where citizens can register themselves online abroad in order to see where we have to open the electoral polls. Myself, with my colleagues from civil society, several organizations, we launched an informational campaign, and we realized that people contact us telling that they have been previously registered without their knowledge in the Russian Federation, cities like Kursk, Odintsova, and other cities. So basically, we realized that the Party of Socialists was undergoing a special operation, which was based on fraud. They've been stealing personal data of people from the state databases or local databases, using their personal data to register those people, many of them living in Belgium, Germany, France, European countries, registering them fraudulently in the Russian Federation in order to have a big number of registration to open a big number of sections, voting polls in Russian Federation. And guess what? Yes, they managed to multiply the previous registrations by 9 times, from 670 to 6,500 over 9 times in under 3 weeks. And they used 2 operations. It was the online fraud and it was written requests fraud. So there was a journalist investigation proving that you see, you can register by 2 methods. You can do it online, or you could do it by hand, by writing a request. So they organized also an operation of collecting the signatures of the people in the northern part of the country. And there is a just journalist investigation which proved that dozens of people had no idea what they're signing for, or that they did not sign, so the signature was fake. So as a result, we have the following graph. We have in 2016 presidential election 8 voting polls, and today, also due to the fraudulent preliminary registration, we have 17. So over 2 times. Now in 2019, we also had the voting polls in Russia, and we had 11. So guess how many people voted there? It's over 4,000 people. So despite the fact that people don't vote in the Russian Federation, they disproportionately opened more voting polls in Russia. And that makes us believe that they're preparing a fraud, because no one does such a huge administrative logistical effort just to, just to have those voting polls. After that, I'd like to mention the fact that the Central Electoral Commission sabotaged the amendments of the recent amendments of legislation related to the financing of political parties. So basically, we had this untransparent financing of political parties where dirty money were used. So the companies have been limited by legislation. The amount they can contribute was limited to €4,500 a year. Well, the Central Electoral Commission interpreted the law the way that they put an equal sign between companies and political parties. So they said, they issued a decision and said that the political party which has a candidate participating in this presidential election cannot finance its candidate over 5,500 euros, which leads to an unequal competition between the government, the people who own the power, and the opposition, because the opposition party can finance its candidate, its own candidate, representing its party only with a ridiculous amount of money, very little amount of money, while those like Dodon, for example, are financed by dozens of companies. In Moldova, you know, the guy who owns the power is financed easily by the business, while if you are in a position, you don't do that because you'll face consequences, serious consequences, like fiscal controls, police controls, and so on. So basically, the Central Electoral Commission made an interpretation of the legislation which put the opposition candidates in a very uneven, unfair situation, unable to compete financially with Dodon. So I could talk more about the central behavior of the Central Electoral Commission, but it's not the case because we have a very limited time. I will go on with political actors. So in this election, we have 8 competitors. Igor Dodon, as you know, is the president of the Republic of Moldova, and he claims to be an independent candidate. So basically, he copies the structure of electoral campaign structure of Putin. So basically, Putin is independent and he's supported by a party of power. So basically, Dodon does the same. He's independent and he's supported by a party of socialists. Party of Socialists who controls the majority of the parliament today with the bits remains of Plahotniuk's political representatives in parliament. Today we had the latest sociological research on ratings, and the Dodon is given a trusted one, is given about 23%. On the second place, we have Maya Sandu with little under 20. On the third, Usati Renato with little under 11, and Ivanov Violeta, the candidate from Shor Party, the guy who stolen $1 billion from the National Bank reserves. It's his candidate. It's a lady. She has little under 5. So the rest of the candidates have under 1.6%. So it's more or less irrelevant. What is important about sociological polls is that we have approximately 61% of people who say that they will go certainly to vote, and approximately 40% of people uncertain if they will vote. So pretty lot. Unfortunately, I don't hear you. I don't hear you. Yeah, probably it says that your microphone is switched off. I don't know why. So basically, that's the situation related to the candidates. Dodon, of course, is being favored by several factors. This is charity foundation which he owns. His associate own, and they use this foundation in order to basically bribe the citizens. This is so-called charity foundations, which was largely used by Dodon and by Shor, because they have obviously large amount of money which they bring into politics through these charity foundations, and they use basically these foundations to influence the socially vulnerable categories. And we're talking here millions and millions. So second, it's the use of the public budget. The public budget was heavily used despite the pandemic's crisis. We have an unprecedented historical deficit. We usually had 4 billion lei deficit. Today it's between 16 to 20. It's almost 45% budget deficit budget in the Republic of Moldova, which is, I repeat, this is the first time in our history we have such a deficit crisis. Despite that, they use the budget for electoral campaign. So they allocated 5 million euro to their mayor, socialist Cheban, who is rebuilding, paving roads and so on. and he decided yesterday to support Dodon openly for a week in his campaign. They paid 2 times by approximately 35 euro to socially vulnerable categories like an aid, a support, even if the budget cannot face it. I mean, we really cannot face it. In order to face it somehow, they borrow approximately 1 billion lei from the companies and citizens by selling state obligations. So basically, in terms of economic administration, it's total nonsense, but they understand that they've been affected very much. I mean, Dodon and so far the social has been affected very much by the pandemics. They managed it very poorly. We have approximately at least 10 people dying every day of COVID. So basically per week we have it's 10 to 15. So usually in the last weeks we have approximately 100 people who die of COVID weekly. And for the last two weeks, we already don't have free places in the hospitals. So in Moldova, the pandemic is one of the worst. The situation related to pandemics is one of the worst in Europe generally. So despite these conditions, they use all those tricks in order to an administrative resource, of course, and the budget and the charity funds in order to corrupt the people. We are afraid there are full signs of the fact that they will be organizing, there will be organized transportation of voters to the Russian Federation. We have proof that they already are doing such an operation. And the official members of voting bureaus are involved. We are expecting a large operation on bringing people from Transnistria, from the left bank of Dniester River. They opened 42 voting polls for Transnistrians. In last elections in 2019, they've been paid 20 euro per person, giving them instructions, bringing them by buses. It's approximately 40,000 people which were brought from Transnistria, and they've been bribed. So we have video recordings, audio recordings of how they've been bribed, how they've been given instructions, and we are afraid we will have the same situation, especially in the second round of this election. We will have the first round on 1st of November and second round on 15th of November. So we expect this operation to be ongoing on 15th of November for the second round. Because it's the most important. It's certain that Dodon will go to the second round, so we will unleash this operation. We will show this operation in the second round. So basically, this is our situation in general terms. We are pretty much afraid of the bias. We are very concerned of the biased behavior of the Central Electoral Commission, of the use of the public administrative resources, and of the fraudulent schemes. Such as organized transportation, the use, the corruption in terms of bribing the electorate, and other aspects of these elections. But I think my time is running off. So.
Okay, Stefan. Yeah, thanks a lot for that picture, which is not maybe very nice, but nevertheless, we need to see and we need to understand what is happening. Now, my proposal is that we shall go from country to country. We have members of our own parliament, who are responsible for different countries, and I would start, Michael, from Michael Galler, who is standing rapporteur on Ukraine and also coordinator of EPP in Ukraine. So, Michael, you can talk about Ukraine, or you can talk about all three countries. That's your choice. Yeah.
No, thank you very much with regards to Ukraine for the input that was delivered. Well, we'll see on Sunday how the local elections will go. Overall, I had one issue that we had also talked about when we had the Ukrainian delegation with us, it is this aspect that in some of the communities along the contact line, there will no elections be held. And contrary to the situation last time, when there was more of a hot war ongoing where they did hold the elections, I still have some question marks actually why it was deemed inappropriate to hold these elections there. I think that has a frustrating effect to the people on the ground. And insofar, perhaps I might get a response from our Ukrainian participants as a point. Then when I listened to the concern that was raised that because of the, well, situation on the ground, we will see many local parties, perhaps founded around a sitting mayor or certain persons. Many local parties may be there and who have no direct link to a national party and their representatives. Well, I wouldn't see it as that dramatic. I think it is more or less a natural effect also of this decentralization and of the amalgamation of new communities. And as a consequence, those people who have come up there and who have been perhaps even short-term office holders, I think at least those who have delivered well and who have already done their job and which is recognized by the people, I think they have all reason to believe that they should be voted or judged upon their own merits, if they have merits already. And therefore they would have a party or a list which they might head and where they ask for the continuous support for them. So I wouldn't see a problem that there will be many local parties composing both the city councils and then perhaps also the mayoral position. I mean, we have in my country, in Germany, we have, well, 16 different, as we have 16 states, we have 16 different models for election in the local level. And we have very interesting divergence also. There are Länder, there's one of the major ones, Baden-Württemberg in the southwest, where there has been a decade-long tradition that on the local level, people vote for lists of a free voters alliance, and these parties, they only stand on the local level, and for national elections and regional elections people would vote for the traditional parties that are around nationwide. Insofar that has worked well, and I think in the Ukrainian case it shouldn't, so to say, for the ruling party it should therefore not raise too much concern, because they could argue, well, look, first of all, we are new and we didn't have the time to build up our own structures so much. But on the other side, it is a verdict about the achievements or the conduct of those who are currently around. And they wouldn't, if they are not represented, if the outcome is that Sluga Naroda as the ruling party on the national level isn't that much represented, they do not need to take it as something that is against them. To the contrary, I would say, as they have managed to complete or to further develop the decentralization, they have all arguments to say, look, the people have accepted it. There has been a high turnout, if there has been a high turnout, and the people have voted for those on the ground who have been there when they have been good, or they have voted them out when they have not delivered and voted for somebody else. So I think what is important is that we hopefully see a high turnout on Sunday. On the 25th is Sunday, yeah. Have a high turnout, and that we see that those who have already delivered well, who are doing a good job, that they are sort of rewarded, and those who don't deliver, that they are voted out. I think that is a a good opportunity, and I'm therefore optimistic with regard to holding these elections. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks. And I see, yeah, if Alexander would be ready to answer at the end now of this session on Ukraine, because I see Witold Waszczykowski, who informed us that he will need to leave, earlier. So, Mr. Waszczykowski, please, your comment or your question, whatever you would like. And I would remind that Witold is chairman of European Parliament delegation with Ukraine.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thank you very much. A few minutes because after 2 o'clock I have another meeting directly on the European relationship after the European Union summit on Ukraine. First of all, I would like to say that I fully share a number of comments presented by our experts. I also think that the ruling party will not be dominant party in the local elections anymore for a variety of reasons. I'm afraid that pro-Russian forces will be much more stronger by now, and this is which worries me, that it could be the beginning of what in Kremlin they expect start the process of anti-Maidan. Of course, I don't mean literally Maidan in Kiev as a huge manifestation protest to overthrow the government, but the process, anti-Maidan as a process leading to cancel close relationship between Ukraine and European Union and to bring back Ukraine to the Commonwealth of post-Soviet countries. So that's a danger. Next, I would like to mention that local elections are very important in the democratic countries, especially in a number of European Union countries, because same is in Lithuania and other countries. Most, at least half or maybe more money which is circulating in the political, economic, social, and business life is run by the local authorities. Local authorities are also consumers, mostly consumers of subsidies of the European Union. That's why we have to pay attention to the local authorities and to encourage Ukrainians to pay attention also to this local election, because this is the quality of life of normal citizens. It's of course partially the responsibility of the central government to run the country, but in the provincial areas, of course, this is a local authority which is much more important. And finally, let me come back to the Russian worries. I would say we cannot. Mr. Kubilius, you rightly created this seminar in the context of other elections in Moldova and Georgia. Of course, we have on the margin, on the side, also the situation in Belarus, and all these situations are monitored by Moscow. And when I read the information coming from Moscow and comments, they worry that they are going to be surrounded by the color revolutions from Belarus to Moldova to Georgia again. And they are preparing for they are trying to prepare themselves for some kind of reaction to this revolution. They are lucky they have a lame duck situation in the United States right now, because it's the last time of election, and then there will be transition of power. So we have to be cautious also and monitor the situation in Kremlin, because Kremlin may react and use it. I always say that Putin is predictable. Putin is predictable. Whenever we have problems, he is going to react. So now we do have problems in a number of the countries around, and also in the European Union. We are very much involved, engaged in our domestic European Union discussions about the future of the European Union. So it's excellent time for Putin to react and hit us in number of places. Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, they are one of them. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mr. Waszczykowski. Now, I would ask Viola von Kramon, also member of European Parliament from Greens and deputy chairperson of the same delegation towards Ukraine. So, Viola, please, floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I can be relatively brief since Michael and Witold Waszczykowski have already mentioned quite a lot of points which are, I think, important for the upcoming local elections. I think at one point they will be diverse. There will be many different candidates for sure. And what also Alexander Sushko has stressed and undermined said that especially during the last years, of course, this decentralization process has led to also a self-confidence in the region, in the city council, in even smaller communities, that different people decided to run on a list, on their own, on smaller lists. So actually what I've seen from the candidate side, this is more vibrant and this is definitely more diverse of what we have ever seen before in Ukraine. Nevertheless, talking to those more independent and progressive liberal candidates and asking them what they think, how their chances are, and how likely it will be that the council or they will succeed, or the council, the composition of the council will look different than in the past, they're actually not too optimistic. And that's interesting to hear. On one hand, I share fully the impression of Witold Waszczykowski that there will be a shift of power back from Sluga Naroda, back from the Zelensky party towards, at least in the east and in the south, the more, let's say, I don't want to call it pro-Russian, but at least the less democratic or less progressive part. So the more former Yanukovych party of region, this type of candidate and of parties. And this is, I think, also not only because of the Russian influence, but also to the frustration that the reforms haven't succeeded and that they haven't seen enough reforms by the pro-Western or by the pro-EU forces. And this is also a problem. But when it comes to more independent candidates and younger ones, especially also women in the region, I think we have done from the international community side quite a lot of effort and really try to support them and to empower them to run and to present themselves. But maybe we should keep on fighting for this diversity in the long run. We will see how much it will be paid off for now. Unfortunately, and I think this is really on the negative side, we cannot send any international observers. We will see the local observers. We will see, let's say, very serious observers from EPDE and others who are well known and who have very qualified monitoring missions. But nevertheless, people as the European Parliament, also OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and NATO Parliamentary Assembly, they will be missed. And I don't know what is the decision now on Georgia. Since we are not allowed to go, I have heard that still the OSCE and NATO have decided and will stick to their decision to observe this election. And what I've heard from Moldova, it's such a shame, and it would be of utmost importance, would be so important to send some more people out there. Even in the Corona crisis, it really makes a big difference. And this is something I'm really suffering under. I see the situation, and this will be exploited by Putin and his people. It will be so easy to even go on an open fraud and an open way to bribe people to pay to bring them over by buses, because nobody is there to really document this in in an amount or in an extent which would be appropriate and necessary. So on one hand, in Ukraine, at least, I see there is a big progress. Whether this will be enough and whether those candidates will have a real chance to enter the council or the institution they are running for. But nevertheless, this has changed from the, let's say, composition of the candidates for sure. The frustration of the ruling party is large, and this will mainly pay off, I would say, to the more Eastern, more Yanukovych and more the old Soviet style of parties and candidates, unfortunately. And also, I think Zelensky has made also some mistakes. Michael Gala and I have talked about this. They really made the registration of some of the new parties, which were founded by the Lord Mayors of the biggest cities, made them very difficult, and there was no reason, there was no necessity to obstruct this process. And this shows a little bit, I think, the uncertainty of Sluga Naroda and the fear of competition. Hopefully, it will not pay off in the sense that people are too much reluctant to go for new candidates. But in the end, in the way, it was at least an attempt by Zelensky and his people to undermine this. So this would be my short remarks for.
Thanks a lot, Viola. So, Alexander, can you react now, to some of those comments, and we shall end then this, Ukrainian chapter of our panel. But I would ask you also, can you tell us at the end, a few words about this Zelensky 5 questions or whatever, referendum or plebiscite? What does, how people are looking into that, and some specific, my specific question. Can you elaborate a little bit, what an impact of those local elections, which we can predict what will be, the results, especially in the eastern part of Ukraine, what will be the impact on national level of politics, towards Rada, towards, towards their, work and reforms and so on and so on. So please, Alexander.
Thank you. Now, can you see me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. That's our pleasure now.
Okay. Finally, thank you. So Mr. Galler on say controversy when the Central Electoral Commission just canceled the elections in some eastern areas, motivating it with justifying it through the unsafe and pure environment. I also share, and many in the civil society share this assessment, that it is not, cannot be justified just through security argument, because you are right, then 5 years ago the conditions were much more difficult, and anyway the elections in the most of those areas have been conducted. So now really it's a big controversy, which certainly are heavily criticized by opposition parties, but also by the civil society. I think that here there is a solution. We certainly cannot change that right now, but there is an advocacy, and there will be pressure continued to have an election there, likely in the first half of the next year. So I think that after elections, with more clear picture of the, I would say, the political spectrum, it will be easier to convince the Central Election Commission and the ruling party in particular reconsider this decision and have these elections maybe in spring next year. Then on the change in political landscape, yes, the risk of the growing voting turnout of the so-called pro-Russian parties. Some of them are implicitly pro-Russian, some explicitly, but it's true that last year the big part of these pro-Russian voters voted for Zelensky, and now they are coming back to their parties because Zelensky has disappointed them with his policy. He is not conducting pro-Russian policy, so they are turning back to their traditional political constituencies, such as Medvedchuk's opposition bloc, some new populistic parties like Shari party. So there are some parties of this spectrum, and the total I would say prognosis for the output for these parties together is between 20 and 25%. For now, it's certainly a significant amount, but not the critical one. However, that's 20% is a national estimate, while in some eastern areas and in the south also, there is a risk that in some constituencies, these pro-Russian parties will create majorities in the local councils, and certainly that will be a challenge for the entire political stability in the longer run. So this risk exists. However, it should not be exaggerated in such a way that it's something. This is not something unprecedented. This is exactly what that scope of pro-Russian voters which we usually have after Maidan, after 2014. So it depends not so much on the total number of votes for pro-Russian party, but on the situation on the local level and the strategy which this party will try to implement after election, how to convert this electoral result into more significant standpoint on the national level. So there will be a point of bargain then with the central government in order to change overall political direction, maybe. So that's a risk. And taking into account that the central government and Zelensky himself is rather weak, it's rather weak and even weaker after elections. So they will use this weakness of the ruling party and president in order to bargain. So that's a risk. And certainly that's also part of this, I would say, big, dilemma of Ukraine after the local elections, because almost all the political analysts say that there will be inevitable change in the central government after the election. So there will be either reconfiguration of the cabinet of ministers in order to satisfy appetites of some oligarchic forces, or even it may be early parliamentary elections next year on the basis that there is no longer stable political majority in the current Rada. So it also can be part of the outputs if the overall result of the ruling party will be much lower, and they will lose any kind of the political courage. So the other party will try to use momentum in order to reshape overall political stage, and then I cannot rule out then the next year we will face preterm parliamentary elections. So that I can foresee. And the question regarding these questions from Zelensky. Certainly, there is no legal framework for this. This is not a plebiscite. This is not a referendum because there is no legal framework for this. This is informal process, which is heavily criticized by the opposition as they consider it as to be the informal, I would say, promotion of the ruling party at the voting day. The voting day you cannot campaign, but this informal say questioning people near the polling stations will be considered as an informal campaigning during the voting day, which is not allowed. So that will be already used by the other political forces as a pretext to challenge the legal the behavior of the ruling party and the president. So it's heavily criticized. There will be no direct legal consequences on whatever result is there, because there is no legitimate counting of votes. There is no output to be translated into the legal decisions, certainly. But that's an instrument to mobilize voters. I think that when we look at these 5 questions, this is about mobilizing the interest of certain categories of voters, which may abstain from the vote normally, but when they see that there will be this poll, and this poll some way touches their interests or their maybe emotions, they more likely to come to the polling stations. So I think that this is a major reason why Zelensky want these people to come to increase the turnout, which is certainly in his, because Sluga Narodu voters are the most absentist group, so they are not heavily politically, and this poll is an instrument to engage this part of people. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alexander. Thanks a lot. So that was, conclusion of our chapter on Ukraine. Now perhaps we're switching to Georgia, and I would like to ask first of all my colleague Rasa Juknevičienė from Lithuania, member of European Parliament and Deputy Chair of South Caucasus Delegation. Rasa, please comment your comment, and then I will ask Marketa Grigorova also to make a comment on Georgia.
Thank you, Andrews, first of all, for organizing this interesting seminar. And it's very important to have broader view, not only to look into one country, but to the countries like trio countries, and to see differences and similarities, what's going on. So I will try to put two messages. One more broader message about the whole situation in all countries and the region and Eastern Partnership countries, how to say shortly. And I will start, maybe you will surprise, by quoting Putin, because also yesterday on this very well-known Valdai conference, he again and again repeated his very well-known message, that saying that importing democracy into the former Soviet space has not worked. And I dare to say the opposite when I see the situation around. The Kremlin's exported model of corrupt autocracy in the former Soviet space does not work. Of course, not 100% doesn't work. It works, of course, but not in the on the same way as Kremlin is expecting. And especially Belarus is an example. And if Belarus is fighting for democracy and different life in their country, so for countries, trio countries, is obligatory. It's their destiny to be in front and to go forward with even more power, more energetically. And still, of course, the second message on the broader understanding is that still, unfortunately, the direction pro-Russian and pro-European political forces, they are dividing the countries, and is utmost important still for all countries. They are facing election in front. And we know how Kremlin hybrid warfare instruments are used, so it's nothing new. And of course, political systems, weak political systems in a general way is the most important challenge. Center-right, usually they have partners in the in European Union. They are members or associated members in some political groups like EPP. But so-called left usually is more pro-Kremlin, unfortunately, and it's, I think, the task or challenge for all actors of political scene in all countries, including center-right, to engage other political groups to be part of political families, political left, family, socialist or other groups in European Union. It would be very useful. So now on Georgia a little bit. Of course, only one message, and it was already mentioned, what is the most important: fair and free election. So, and election according to the international standards. It will be a good opportunity, I think, this time for ruling party to send very clear message. If they really, and I am sure, I believe that they are really in favor of further European integration, to send very clear message that relations with the EU and further development are more important for them than only to keep power at any circumstances, even not fitting into international standards. So this is utmost important. They can put on their programs 2024 or 2025 or I don't know 2023 for membership. It's very important. I congratulate such developments. But on the other hand, without free and fair election, without very smooth change of the power, if it will happen, or ability to cooperate with other political groups in future parliament, it will be very important message. And especially for us, for the friends of Georgia in European Parliament, when we are trying to convince other people to be more active and to support Georgia as really leader of democratic developments in the region. So of course we saw developments. They are encouraging us much. 8th of March agreements and of course application for membership, as I already mentioned, and of course heat temperature before every election is high in every country, but those international standards related with hate speeches, not to use hate speeches, and to not to attack opposition, as it always happens in such countries like Georgia. It's very important. So we are following election. It's, of course, we cannot be there physically, not to observe elections as a group of or delegation of European Parliament, but every week we have discussions, meetings, information. We are getting information from Georgia, what's going on, and I think today's situation with the connections on Zooms and every other platforms are important, and we will do our best to elaborate the final understanding or final conclusion on what's going on in Georgia.
Okay, Rasa, thanks a lot. And now Marketa Grigorova from the Greens group in the European Parliament and from Czech Republic, and also Deputy Chairwoman of Euronest delegation. So Marketa, you can talk about Georgia, but you can talk about all Eastern Partnership since you are above, individual countries. So please, and where is your cat now? We saw cat, but it disappeared.
Thank you very much for inviting me. My cat is right now on my lap because she's very jealous when I'm speaking with someone else. So thank you also for organizing this, and to all the other speakers, to what they mentioned, especially, of course, my colleague, Ms. Yuknevičian and Mr. Kakachia. Thank you. I will focus mostly on Georgia because even though I am, of course, in the Euronest Bureau, I am focusing on a lot on this specific country, but I would like to then conclude with a little bit remark towards the region because it is very turbulent as a whole. We know it. So as for Georgia, actually just brief remarks because these elections are unprecedented in several ways, and therefore even the result will be something very important for the future of development of Georgia and how it will look like. Because not only it's not just about the fact that there is a new electoral system which will take place for the first time, and so it will be also a test for that, but it's also why this electoral system was put into place in the first place. It was because the citizens of Georgia went into the streets and demanded this. So it is a result of activism and of active citizen participation. Thus, the results of these elections and the change in electoral system will be very, very strong, whatever the result will be. As for the result itself, that might be very interesting. I've been looking at some preliminary polls, and of course, I know that we have to take polls, with some distance. However, it seems that the current government might need to join forces with other parties, or the current opposition and even some other parties that are not yet in the parliament might join the forces with them. It will all depend actually on coalitions, and in these elections every vote might count, because if it depends on coalitions, one of the new changes in the electoral system is also the change to threshold, which will be now just 1%, which means that quite a few new parties might join the parliament and mix up the current power balance or power forces. So that might really bring interesting new faces and players, and I think we should be vigilant about it, but also look forward to that because it's always refreshing. And also, it will, to some extent, decide the direction in which the country will go. Because, of course, I've listened to the great news about Georgia's, let's say, ambition to ask for European Union membership. That would be amazing. But also, of course, based on the coalitions, we have slightly more pro-European bloc and slightly less pro-European bloc. So based on who will be in the end in the government, we will see which direction the country will take for the upcoming years. And of course, as I already mentioned at the beginning, because this came from actually the bottom up, this electoral change, that also means that they will have very strong mandate, whatever will happen. Of course, we also need to be vigilant about the fact that whichever side won't form the government might become unhappy with the results, and there might be again people in the streets or demonstrations or any kind of activities like that. And there is not only important role of the European Union, I think, to ensure that the transition or the processes are smooth and of course without violence, and we need to monitor that, but also that the coronavirus requirements and everything that's now in place doesn't block citizens from manifesting their opinions and their democratic possibilities. So that would be just briefly to what I think we can expect and what we can, I will say it optimistically, look forward to in these elections, because I think they will be very important. Last but not least, I want to mention something regarding the whole region. Of course, the war over Nagorno-Karabakh is influencing even the other countries, not just Ukraine, not just Armenia and Azerbaijan. For example, in Georgia, there are of course diasporas, and it influences the elections, and it makes citizens more restless. And of course, it is always over that is always a lot of disinformation going on too, which is not just for the elections themselves, but even for the war and for how it approaches the minorities of other nationalities in Georgia and other countries. So I think it is now more than ever really important for us as the European Union, and of course even for the region, to stay coherent as much as possible, to really support each other, to be the Eastern Partnership we established 11 years ago, because we can really see whatever is happening in one country highly influences what is going on in others. So I would just like us to keep this in mind and to, of course, observe what is going on there as much as we can during these difficult times. And thank you again for inviting me.
Thanks a lot, Marketa. Thanks a lot. And so now, Kornelija, can you make final comments on Georgia? And of course, my question is very simple. So, who will be forming coalition? At the end.
Yeah.
Can you tell us if?
Yeah, I think that's the demand from Georgian society and the expectation from Georgian society. And of course, I agree what was said here. And we think that in that case, Georgia will be in better place. Of course, there's some attempts from ruling party. They try to portray, especially there's a, as it was mentioned, there's a war of polls actually going on in Georgia. Almost every political party or every television has its own polls, and this actually undermines now credibility of the polls. And that's another issue. As a social scientist, I really care about that. But I think in overall, I think we will have a multi-party democracy. And of course, with the new changes in electoral law and also constitutional in constitution, we probably should expect more role for parliament. Another question is how actually parliament is ready for that, because when you're moving from one system to the parliamentary system, you need to strengthen the oversight of the parliament. And I think there's a lot of things can be done. But major thing is that this election should be held in fair, and also all political parties should have same opportunities. Of course, there's some challenges because ruling party has a much higher financial opportunities, and they have an influence on media and some other areas, especially in regions. Basically, in some areas they may have a monopolies, and it's very hard for opposition. And another challenge is also the opposition, fragmentation of the opposition, and that's a huge challenge actually for Georgia, because even though they tried, there were several attempts to have some sort of coalition or the opposition, they could not manage to have a strong bloc against ruling government. So I think overall the result of this election will be very important for Georgia's further Europeanization, and I think also for the region, because in many ways what's going on now on Nagorno-Karabakh, if Georgia, Ukraine and Moldova, they will be success stories in short term or long term, that will impact immensely the region. And just one more point also, which I didn't touch here, about the so-called pro-Russian forces, which we may have in the parliament. As you know, after 2008 war, Russia lost direct influence on Georgian politics. They're now trying to to somehow get back this influence, and they try to support some political parties as well as civil society organization to get this support. And there might be some scenario that at least one political party who harbors very pro-Russian sentiment, they may be in the parliament. So of course there will be a lot of attempts from Russia and from their proxies in Georgia to start the debates actually where Georgia should belong. Should Georgia get back to the Eurasian Union or CIS, or to European Union? Fortunately, that's a non-starter discussion in Georgia, unlike in some other EAP countries. And but now we need actually we need to be very vigilant. What will be the coalition in case we have a coalition? And if in case, like ruling party will get a majority there, what kind of political parties they will have this alliance? Because that can be very crucial for future, for Euro-Atlantic future of Georgia. I'll stop here, and if there will be any question, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Cornelia. Really, it's very, very interesting and very important, of course, especially Georgian elections, parliamentary elections. I think they are crucial and for the whole Eastern Partnership. Now it's our time to move to Moldova. And we have Siegfried Mureșan, one of the leaders from EPP group and also leading Moldova delegation. So Siegfried, and since Siegfried is from Romania, so he knows everything about Moldova, and please go ahead with your comment.
A bit. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrius, and good afternoon, dear colleagues. So what is the situation and what can we expect, and particularly what can we do in the Republic of Moldova? There will be presidential elections now in 2 rounds, obviously. The main candidates are the current pro-Russian President Igor Dodon and Maia Sandu, center-right, pro-European candidate, former prime minister, former minister of the country, also running in the 2016 presidential election. The outcome then between Maia Sandu and Igor Dodon was very close. Maia Sandu and Igor Dodon were then the candidates who made it to the second round, and the end result was very close, 52 to 48%. What will happen now? Exactly the same thing. Maia Sandu and Igor Dodon will go into the second round. Why am I so certain that the 2 candidates will go into the second round? Because Moldova continues to be a polarized country between the pro-Russian public and between the pro-European voters categories of the society. And the country is polarized, and this polarization we will already see in the first round of elections. 4 years ago, in the pro-European center-right camp, there was a multitude of candidates. And Maia Sandu already in the first round obtained a very good result and made it into the second round, almost 40% already in the first round. I believe the first round results now will be very similar because the country is polarized and because Maia Sandu and Dodon will be getting most of the votes in the first round. The second round will be equally close, exactly as last time. What is the importance of these elections? There were parliamentary elections 1.5 years ago. And out of that, and before those parliamentary elections, an oligarch, you remember him, Vladimir Plahotniuc, he was controlling a parliamentary majority and Moldova was becoming a captured state. After the elections, Maia Sandu and Igor Dodon, although they have nothing in common politically, on geopolitical terms, in terms of, democracy, in terms of judiciary, in terms of values, they have nothing in common. They have, for a short period of time, united forces to get rid of Plahotniuc. So they formed a government, and Maia Sandu managed then to make the pro-Russian socialists sign up to a pro-European government. Her government was pro-European not only in statements, but also in actions, and the European Commission, the External Action Service, would all, in an objective manner, tell that the time when Maia Sandu was prime minister was the time when Moldova made the most progress towards the European Union, respected most of its commitments than ever. I mean, respected all of the commitments which they made then, but more commitments than ever before than with any other government. It was a very good period for the relations between the EU and Moldova. So, but of course, the fact that Maia Sandu had for some months a government supported by the pro-Russian socialists is of course being exploited, and they were trying to make use against her of this element. Although, as I said, the government was clearly a pro-European government. The European Commission says it, and not only in words but also in decisive actions. Over a reform of judiciary, President Dodon 1 year ago organized himself a parliamentary majority and overthrew Maia Sandu's government, and since then is controlling an ad hoc parliamentary majority. His party is basically the main party supporting the current government. So what I'm trying to say is the following. President Dodon is controlling the parliamentary majority right now. It's very fragile, you know, I mean, it's there, 1 MP more, 1 MP less, and so on. Our people have brought a motion of no confidence, not succeeded to bring down the prime minister so far. The government is fragile, is controlled by Dodon. The importance of this presidential elections lies in the fact that if Dodon is to win, he will consolidate power. His government will survive up to, with this prime minister or with another prime minister, but a government under his total control will survive until the ordinary parliamentary elections. If Maia Sandu were to win the presidential elections, then obviously this fragile government supported by Dodon can be overthrown. And so the importance of the elections is not only in the power of the president, but given the fragility of the government and the fact that it's linked to Dodon, it also has an importance for the parliamentary majority, because basically there are 3 blocks there: the pro-Europeans, Dodon's pro-Russian socialists, and Vladimir Plahotniuk's former party, which is also divided now, and basically it's a bit leaderless and so on. So my prediction is that either of the 2 candidates who wins the presidential election can also form a parliamentary majority and govern the country for the next 2 years. This is why the election is important. What can we do now? Firstly, before the elections, before the first and also before the second round, communicate the following element very clearly. The Republic of Moldova is a country which received lots of support from the European Union, including during the COVID crisis, and it will continue to receive support in the next years. Communicate very clearly that our support is conditioned by free and fair elections and by a plurality of, by a genuine pluripartitic parliamentary system, in the sense that our main expectation is that these elections are free and fair without any question marks, and we are only able to help the Republic of Moldova if these basic democratic conditions are met. They are also written in our agreements. They were written in the macroeconomic, in the preconditions for the macro-financial assistances in the past also, and also now. So this, I think, needs to be a very clear message sent, and also as a warning to the authorities and to those organizing the elections. The conditions, the conditionality, this is a principle embraced largely by the people of the Republic of Moldova. They say, of course, we want help, but we want it to be attached to conditions to make sure that money gets to those people in need, not to those who are in charge of distributing the money. So the principle of conditionality, it will not receive unanimous support in Moldova like it never does, but it has wide support, and all of the, pro-European voters, they would support it. Then the equal access of candidates to media. How media is treating the candidates in an objective and fair manner is something that we need to look into very carefully, and also speak up about this. And this should not only be a topic that we look into during election campaigns, but also in between. And the fact is that always the European Union, the Republic of Moldova, in the past years, has expected reforms with regards to the audiovisual code, to the media landscape. Things were legiferated, but there is still one big step from legiferation to implementation. So what I'm trying to say is the independence of media is an important element. We need to look up. We need to look at it now. We need to speak up now, but we should not forget it the day after elections. The financing of candidates, the transparent financing of candidates, it's something that also needs to be observed, and the voting abroad. It's clear that people living in Russia would vote rather with one candidate, and people living in the European Union would vote rather with the other candidates. So we need to make sure that people living abroad can vote without any restrictions. And we all remember the queues at the last elections in EU member states, limited number of polling stations, a limited number of people who could vote per polling station, 3,000, not more. So big queues in Paris, London, Bucharest, other EU capitals. So Moldova is a country with a very big diaspora, a quarter of the population living abroad. So this is why the voting abroad is so important, and it can be decisive. It can be decisive. So any unbalance, by the Central Electoral Committee, where we have observed worrying decision recently, any of their decisions, to allow more polling stations in Russia, less in EU, it's clear that it would lead to advantages to one candidate. So there is this risk, if Dodon is winning, that there will be even more centralization of power in one hand. We saw in Moldova the risk of becoming a captured state under Plahotniuc. As Plahotniuc succeeded, Dodon can succeed as well if he wins re-election and controls the parliamentary majority. My last point, time is ticking in the Republic of Moldova, because the young, educated, pro-European voters, they need to see a perspective. They saw it last year when Maia Sandu became prime minister, when there was a genuine pro-European government for some months. But these people, very often when you talk to them, when I go and meet students in Chisinau, unfortunately, many of them intend to leave for Romania or for other European countries. This is why this election is so important, because there is a critical mass of pro-European people in the country. But when elections are so tight, in 4 years' time, the critical mass might just, disappear in a biological way, in the sense that moving towards Western Europe, unless they see a perspective in the country. So this is why I say the time is ticking, and it's so important. And these elections are so important, because if not, the young, the educated workforce will, the pro-European ones will leave for Europe, and then the majority will not be a pro-European one, and then even if elections are free and fair, the outcome will not be the one that we as pro-Europeans would like to see. That's it from my side. Andrius, really, thank you very much for bringing us together today.
Siegfried, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And now, then we shall ask Stefan to make maybe final comment on Moldova. You still unmute yourself.
Okay, now
now
it's okay. Well, mostly I agree with Mr. Mureșanu. There is maybe one remark. I'm afraid that the motion of censure, which was organized previously and gathered 49 votes, unfortunately with the participation of our opposition parties, especially by Andrei Năstase, who lost a lot of support in the last time. It's the so-called Dignity and Truth political party. This motion vote of no confidence helped Plahotniuc and Shor to negotiate with Dodon. There are big money involved, and the dispute is focused on the actives, money and real estate and different objects such as Moldovan International Airport of Chisinau, and also Plahotniuc and shore security. We have information that Shore is negotiating through Dodon his return to Russian Federation, where his family is. So basically, Plahotniuc has two factions now in the parliament. He has influence on. This is pro-Moldova, and this is Shore faction. In total, it's approximately 20 votes. So it's a significant group. So due to the fact, having in mind that half of pro-Moldova Plahotniuc people officially support Violeta Ivanov, the candidate of Shore in this parliamentary election, we can say that there is a negotiation going behind the court curtains. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that even if Maia Sandu wins these elections, we will have a relatively stable parliamentary majority controlled by Dodon. And it's an open question what should be our actions after the presidential election if Maia Sandu wins this election, because staying 3 years with such a corrupt parliament is a very bad option for the Republic of Moldova, of course. And with the current government or another government, if it is controlled by Dodon and his associates. So basically, there are bad options and very bad options, unfortunately. But what is important for our society today is that we have a moral victory. Dodon today is a symbol of irresponsibility and corruption. And actually, he helped a lot the opposition by his behavior, because he behaved extremely irresponsible, especially in these pandemics. He's an example of how a president should not behave. So I suppose, even despite those contradictions which exist traditionally on the right wing, center right wing among the candidates, I suppose Maia Sandu could win if she does her campaign. This week, something very important happened, and the European Union should be aware of what is going on in terms of Russian influence, because this is not a hoax, this is not a myth. And this week actually proofs have been presented. There is a RISE, a international journalistic investigation group called RISE Project. They published documents extracted from a BlackBerry presidential, the phone, the smartphone of President Dodon, which they obtained somehow. And they have proved that in the Russian presidential administration, Putin's administration, there is a specialized department working on Moldova with Dodon. So it's called Moldovan Department. It's run by a general, security general, special services general. And the journalists published even documents which prove that the foreign speeches of Dodon are written by a Russian presidential administration. And they're simply given to Dodon so that he reads them in front of other foreign countries' representatives. So we have a big interference here, and Russian special services are working and are very active. And we have to be aware of who are we facing. We are not facing just Dodon. We are facing also expertise of the Russian special services in political terms. And there is a team of Russian experts, specialized in political technologies, working with Dodon right now. So basically, there is also, this Bahamas investigation. Journalists proved that Dodon associates received €1.5 million from Bahamas, from Russian money, dirty Russian money. And these amounts were used to finance the Party of Socialists. What makes it even worse is that the new general prosecutor says that's all politics and he has nothing to do with it, and he's not going to investigate this. So basically, you can bring as many proofs and information as you want. Our general prosecution office says that it's irrelevant, they don't care about it. So basically, we cannot, me personally, my colleagues from Watchdog community, and other non-governmental organizations, we do not expect anything from the public authorities of the Republic of Moldova. We rather rely on citizens and people and their reaction, because if the election will be frauded, the Central Electoral Commission will defend Igor Dodon and will play with Igor Dodon in his interest. And that's why actually I focus so much on the Central Electoral Commission behavior and their misconduct. Unfortunately, there is a clear majority favoring Igor Dodon in the Central Electoral Commission. So it is important for us and for the European Union to help us somehow focus on the frauds, which we are sure will be going on in the Russian Federation, in the voting polls open in the Russian Federation, and in those voting polls which are open for the Transnistrian region, which are 42. So in Russia it's 17 and in Transnistria it's 42. And I agree with Mr. Mureșanu. He said a very, very important thing. The result will be very close. We are talking approximately a difference of 3 to 5%. Due to pandemics, we expect a low participation. So usually the electoral pool is 1.4 million, 1.4 growing to 1.5 something in the second tour. So this time, due to pandemics, we could expect a lower participation, which means that if they fraud 3 to 5%, let's say between 35 to 50,000 votes, even 70,000 votes, I would say. There are 4 different schemes of frauding votes. We could talk about, probably we don't have enough time. So I will skip this. And I'm just willing to say that depending on the participation, the fraud will have a higher percentage if the participation is low. For example, 35%, if it's 1 million participation, it's 3.5%. If it's 1.5 million participation, 35,000 frauded votes is a much lower percentage. And the impact, the final impact is diminishing. So basically, my argument is that they are preparing to fraud. We know that, we are sure about that. They will be bribing people, especially in the second round. They will be using Transnistrian resource. We will be using these voting polls in the Russian Federation. And here I want to tell you a very important thing. Due to the fact that the Central Electoral Commission limited the financial support of the political parties to its candidates, they have no money to send people to the Russian Federation to observe the elections. We have voting polls in Khanty-Mansiysk. If you look on the map, you'll get an idea where it is. We simply have no resources to cover those 17 voting polls in the Russian Federation. And my colleagues from Watchdog, I'm an associate expert also working with Watchdog, we sent a request, official one from the organization, asking the European Union to delegate employees from the EU embassies in the Russian Federation to those voting polls in order to observe the voting procedure. So if the European Union could help us with this one, could help us and send some observers from the staff of the European Union embassies in the Russian Federation, that could help us a lot in terms of documenting the fraud. There's our hope, a modest one, is that if we could document the frauds, the Constitutional Court, in case Maia Sandu loses, would not accept recognizing this election as free and fair and validating the mandate, but for that we have to document the frauds. we already caught them with this preliminary registration. It's purely, it was purely a coincidence that we thought about having such a campaign, advertising the right of the people to register themselves so that we have enough voting polls in abroad in other countries. And the people started writing to us that their personal data was stolen and they cannot register themselves because someone registered them already in Russian Federation. As a result, as I said, in the Russian Federation, the preliminary registration rose 9 times, while the average in the world was 2 times, right? So we actually had a very good result. We had 24,000 people registered for this presidential election in previous elections as well. And we increased this number to 60,000. It's over 120%. The problem is that for the Russian Federation, which was very passive always in this preliminary registration, they increased it artificially from 670 to 6,500. And that allowed them to increase the voting polls from 11 to 70. Imagine they sent 81,000 voting bulletins, how you call it in English? Bulletini de vote. I'm missing the term. The blank sheets which you used to vote.
Bulletins. That's, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So in 2019 parliamentary elections, you had 4,300 people voting, right? In 2016, you had more, you had like 8,000. So 2016, 8,000, 2019, 4,000. So there is no ground to open more, it's already enough. And they opened 17 and sent 81,000 bulletins to Russian Federation. Why they do that? We already have Facebook groups in Russia where people and members of the commissions, of this voting commission, electoral commissions from Russian voting polls already advocate and advertise and organize transportation. So we are preparing something now about this. We'll be fighting back, but it's already clear where it is going. They will be frauding, they will be bribing, and they have resources for that. Putin yesterday made a statement in support of Dodon openly. Naryshkin the day before yesterday made an open statement defending Dodon as a result of this RISE investigation, showing that Dodon actually is an agent of Russian Federation in the position of the president of the Republic of Moldova. And basically Russia says, tells everyone that we will be fighting for Moldova and the election result. So we need your support in these terms, and we need your help in monitoring this election.
Well, thanks a lot, Stefan. You know, and Siegfried. Really, it's clear picture of what is going to, how things are going on in Moldova. You know, still I am hopeful and optimistic that really pro-European forces will manage to show their strength during those very important elections. And in general, you know, as we have seen since the beginning of summer of this year, you know, democracy, freedom is becoming, you know, very popular, I would say, in all Eastern Partnership, you know, region, including Russia itself. Well, we are complaining about, you know, Russian influence, which we witness, you know, in different countries like Moldova, Ukraine, or even Georgia, you know. But as you have mentioned, you know, exactly Naryshkin recently, when he visited Moldova, he made a statement that, you know, they're very much afraid of pro-democracy, you know, changes in all Eastern Partnership countries. Again, you know, that Americans or whatever, you know, or Lithuanians or Romanians are making, you know, impact on democracy developments in the whole region. But I think that really we are coming to some kind of very important historical, you know, period of time, and that is why I'm optimistic that really, you know, Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine will move forward, and their example will make a big impact not only on Belarus, which is, you know, showing such a bravery, but also on Russia itself. So well, we spent more than we planned, on this very interesting seminar. I would like to come to conclusion. First of all, I would like to thank our experts, brilliant experts like Stefan Gigor, Alexander Shushko and Cornelia Kachache from three very important countries. I would like to thank also my colleagues from different groups in European Parliament. And I think that this format, when experts are telling us what is going on in those very important countries, is really very, 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 very good. And perhaps that if you will not become tired of those seminars and webinars and Zooms during pandemics, perhaps it would be very good somewhere at the end of November, after all the elections will happen, in all three countries, and also some elections in Lithuania and small elections, and as I'm saying, in the United States of America, it would be interesting to come back, to talk again with you about what was the outcome, of all those elections, and what kind of conclusions we can make, and what is next going on in all those countries, both individually and as a package of Eastern Partnership trio countries. So thanks a lot to all of you. Good luck, stay healthy, and let's be ready for Democracy Festival. Good. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.